Hi, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. We're just going to give it a couple more seconds to have more viewers populate, and we'll go ahead and get started. In the meantime, if you want to pop into the chat where you're joining us from, and let's see, it's fall, so let's do a quick what are you looking forward to the next, I guess, 1 month of fall that we have coming? I know for sure I am looking forward to the big scarves. I love scarves. So if you want to let us know where you're joining us from and what you're looking forward to this fall, and we'll go ahead and get started. All right. I'll go ahead again. So, hi everyone. I'm Peniel here, and I'm the Policy Engagement Coordinator with the AFSC. You all might have seen me in a couple of these Facebook Live minis here and there. It's been a minute that I've been with you all, so I'm glad to come on today to briefly talk about all the things that are happening that I have been monitoring and watching on your behalfs. Give you all these updates from the Hill, as we call it here in DC, give you all action items and next steps as well. So stay buckled. It's going to be a ride. There's a whole lot going on in DC today, and has been the past couple of weeks, that honestly are a mouthful. As one who works right in the middle of it, it's been overwhelming in a couple of places, but it's always great to remember that at this as we do this work, we're advocating for life-changing opportunities for individuals in our community, and it's always also encouraging when you all take action, join us, and amplify the calls to just and humane immigrant right policies. So we're grateful for that partnership that we've had going on, and without further ado, I'll go ahead and get started. So I'm coming to you all today from DC to talk to you about our efforts to secure a pathway to citizenship, for up to 11 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. But before I get into that, like I said, there's several issues that Congress has been considering for a couple of weeks now. In particular, this week, they were looking at how do they continue funding the government, because today is the last day of fiscal year 2021, and tomorrow ushers in fiscal year 2022. So, as a DC nerd, I'll tell you, happy new fiscal year. And as is norm with Congress, we have barely come together with a proper plan to fund the government for fiscal year 2022. And so they were trying to figure out what's the interim plan. They're also looking at issues around the debt ceiling, which I will not go too much into because I do not know enough to share with you on that, but I want you to know that it's happening, as well as the bipartisan infrastructure package, which is a package that had some priorities on both sides of the chamber and the White House, addressing infrastructure in the United States. And last but not least, there's this package called the Reconciliation Legislation, Build Back Better. She has many names. That has also been the talk of the town. The Reconciliation Bill is another package that essentially hosts many of the priorities of the ruling party at this moment, which is the Democratic Party. And so, as you can tell, there are many things that are moving, many voices involved in this. And as AFSC, alongside other faith partners around the country and other progressive partners around the country, we're looking to make sure that the voices of our communities are not drowned out in these conversations, and that we're inserting ourselves in policy decisions to make sure that they're as broad, as humane, as inclusive as possible. We heard that there has been a vote today, I think, on the Senate side to fund the government temporarily till early December. We anticipate that the House will also be voting. We're also hearing that the House might be moving forward with a vote for their bipartisan infrastructure package. We are yet to share or to know the outcome of that plan, and so we'll keep you posted. But in the meantime, all of this else is going on of relevance to us today is first the reconciliation package. But most importantly, within that reconciliation package, what's relevant to my conversation with you today is our efforts to secure a pathway to citizenship. We're watching many things within the reconciliation package, but today, I, Peniel, will be talking to you about a pathway to citizenship. If you want some other information, stay tuned. Other colleagues will be joining at other times to share those. So right now, we have been urging Congress to put as many as 11 million people on a roadmap to citizenship by using this budget package called the Reconciliation Bill. And now, what's important to know about the Reconciliation Bill is that it does not require a supermajority vote on the Senate side to pass. And just for a refresher, a supermajority vote means 2/3 of the number of people in the Senate. Right now, the Democrats have half of the House, and so this is a package that fits well within their capacity and their power broken dynamics within the Senate to move things forward. When a reconciliation bill is drafted and it's trying to be passed, to stay in that bill and to make it to the president's desk, we need those 50 votes of Democrats, with the vice president, who is also a Democrat as well, making that 51. And we need a favorable ruling from the parliamentarian. You might be seeing the news wondering who the parliamentarian is, what is going on, who's this lady. Elizabeth McDonough is a parliamentarian at the moment, and her role in this entire process is to measure everything that's included in the reconciliation package to say, can this be included in the reconciliation package or not? And her rubric requirement is it has to have significant impact on the federal budget process that is more than incidental to the policy change being sought. So the balance that we're weighing, or she is weighing, is budgetary impacts to policy impacts, and that's what the parliamentarian essentially looks at. And so, as with every other priority, there a pathway to citizenship is included under the scrutiny. What that means is that when we've drafted language for and I say we, but when we've suggested language to Congress and Congress has drafted language for a pathway to citizenship, Ms. McDonough has to look at it and say, does this proposal you have more budgetary impact than policy change impact? And if she feels otherwise, and then she says no. So that's the back and forth that goes on. In terms of the reconciliation process, we had two phases to this. If you might have remembered, the first phase we discussed the passage of the budget resolution, which was agreeing to top line numbers of what will be of like funding that will then dictate what we do in the reconciliation process. And so the top line number that was agreed on by both the House and the Senate was about $3.7 trillion, which is a lot, but not a lot compared to how much the United States spends on defense and on wars and militarizing communities and more. So if you know AFSC, you know for a fact that we advocate for defunding these militarized systems and funding social issues that impact positively the lives of our community members. And so we see this reconciliation bill as one of those pathways to positively impact in the lives of our community members. Within that $3.7 trillion, $107 billion was allocated for a pathway to citizenship, and that sort of $107 billion is then sent to committees both on the Senate side and the House side to draft language. And so in that language, they'll be saying, using this $107 billion, we will put a pathway to citizenship. We will create a pathway to citizenship for XYZ through XYZ. And so once we made it through phase one and we secured that money and we defended the $107 billion, not an easy task. Many advocates were up at night wording off anti-immigrant efforts from members of Congress to reduce the size of that or to exclude people or to ultimately remove that entire funding for a pathway to citizenship. So because of your advocacy and you raising your voices, we made it through a significant hurdle. And now we're in phase two. And phase two is where we draft legislative text to ensure. So we draft legislative text, we ensure that we have votes from our champions, at least 50 votes from our champions on this, and that we get a favorable ruling from the parliamentarian. And this is where things get a little bit more complicated. So, in terms of process, the House and the Senate ultimately have to decide on the same bill. They can go through different routes, do many things, decide not to do anything at all, but before it goes to the president's desk, they have to be in unison on what they present. And so, on the House side, the Senate, the parliamentarian does not get to dictate how they make policy. The parliamentarian is a Senate structure, it's a Senate office, it's a Senate rubric requirement, for lack of a better word. And so the House is able to move forward with developing text. And so we saw legislative language that was developed. We saw that legislative language go through the House Judiciary Committee. And what that legislative language entailed was creating a pathway to citizenship for DACA recipients, or dreamers as they colloquially called, individuals with temporary protected status, individuals with deferred and forced departure, DED, farm workers, and essential workers. Essential workers, if you are unfamiliar with that term, is a term that sort of developed out of this the pandemic that we are currently in. And these are individuals who DHS termed as essential because they had to go into work, because they offered services or provided services to their communities that were vital despite the fact that we were in a pandemic and in a lockdown. And so essential workers range from healthcare workers to childcare workers to farm workers to agricultural workers to janitorial staff. A host of individuals fall into that category. And so we were really excited to see at least that step forward of trying to legislate a pathway to citizenship for these individuals. However, it's important to note that AFSC continues to advocate for all 11 million undocumented individuals. Not everybody has the benefit of falling into these stylized, specialized categories that have visibility in Congress's front. And so we need to make sure that we're advocating for individuals who unfortunately fall within those cracks, who are not dreamers, who are not TPS holders, who, due to the way legislation is done in the United States, are seen as inadmissible because of their contact with the criminal legal system or how they entered the United States, etc. We believe that everyone deserves a way to regularize their status and be permanently protected to continue to seek the life that they want, in stability with their loved ones and their community. And so I say that as all of this was happening, the legislation was drafted. It went through a Judiciary Committee markup. It made it out unscathed. It had other pieces as well, like recapturing unused green cards, some visas-like things. Also putting some money towards USCIS, who adjudicates visas and other immigration benefits. Putting some money to address their backlog, as there's a lot of backlog. And so that happened, and that was great. The bill could have approximately allowed up to 8 million people qualify for this permanent protected status, which is like lawful permanent residency, green cards, as they're colloquially called, and putting them on a pathway to citizenship. We were excited, and then we got the first parliamentarian ruling. Because while the House was doing their own judiciary markup, the Senate's form of their own markup will be the parliamentarian. Because if you're trying to pass something through reconciliation, which has to get the approval of a sort from the parliamentarian, it would make no sense for you to mark up something without asking the parliamentarian, does this look like it could make it through? And so we got an opinion from the parliamentarian saying, this draft that you have put forward here changes laws to clear a way for lawful permanent resident status. And the parliamentarian felt that it was a tremendous and enduring policy change that dwarfed its budgetary impact. And these are her words. Um, and we disagreed with that approach because we know, and many advocates know, economists know, even on the Republican side, a host of advocates know that a pathway to citizenship has significant budgetary impacts. And so we were disappointed by that opinion. And I call it an opinion because it's important to remember that the parliamentarian offers her opinion to the senators, and the senators then decide what to do with that and how to move forward. And so the next course of action was, this is the first bite at the apple. We've put forward a proposal. The parliamentarian does not think that the budgetary impacts dwarf the policy impacts, and thus we will bring something else forward. We believe that a pathway to citizenship has a policy impact, a budgetary impact, and most importantly, a life-changing impact. We're talking about individuals here. Fictitious Senate rules, while in place, should never come in the way of us trying to better the lives of community members. And that's something that is important to remember, because it's very easy for us to get bogged down in these rules and in these terms. But at the end of it, their lives of our loved ones, their lives of our colleagues, our teachers, our friends that are at stake here. And so while that was happening, and the parliamentarian was sharing that opinion, the senators went back again to the drawing board and brought forth a plan to change what you call the registry date. And just briefly, in case you're not familiar with this, the registry is a program under current law that allows certain individuals who have been present in the United States since 1972 to apply for a green card. That law has not been updated since 1986. So there has never been a pathway to citizenship for a host of millions of undocumented immigrants to regularize their status, because laws like that have been left stagnant, and Congress's inaction has caused our community members to fall into the traps of immigration enforcement, of detention and deportation, without changing laws like this to allow them once again access a legal existing pathway to status and citizenship. The parliamentarian once again ruled against, or offered an opinion saying, no, I do not believe that this is any different from the pathway you brought before. I think this is a weighted policy change that once again dwarfs the budgetary nature of what it needs to be. We once again disagree with that, like I shared with my earlier point. And so it's been disappointing to see this tenacity from the parliamentarian, ignoring the fact that there are budgetary impacts that dwarf policy impacts, to put a pathway to citizenship for up to 11 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. So it's important to realize that there's a lot of cooks in this kitchen, a lot of dynamics going on, and we need to keep our eyes on the prize, which is permanent protections for as many as the 11 million undocumented individuals in the United States. And so while Democrats were, working up multiple backup proposals to bring to the parliamentarian, should she rule or offer an opinion against the ones that they brought forward, another one of the proposals that was brought forward was something called parole, which is like a temporary status, which is not a permanent protection. Um, what parole really looks like is it offers deferred action on deportation, so individuals are not seen as not deportable in that moment. It offers them work permits and access to advanced parole, which is like they're able to leave the United States, granted they have permission from DHS. And so we are concerned by, once again, the willingness for members of Congress to want to put our community members in a limbo. A temporary status is limbo. It will forever be limbo. The urgency to do something is real. With each passing day, more and more families and loved ones and communities are separated. They're caught in the web of cruel and unjust detention and deportation policies. And so this is the moment to make something effective. But that thing that is effective has to be efficient, it has to be inclusive, it has to be accessible, and it cannot put people in a vulnerable state. We cannot continue to rely on vulnerable alternatives to permanent residency for the 11 million undocumented people here. DACA and TPS have taught us that. Recipients of DACA and recipients of TPS have been bogged down in litigation upon litigation, trying to defend their right to continue to live in stability with their communities. Protections that are only temporary, tied to employment statuses, or conditional, condemn people to second class statuses, second class social and political statuses that make them vulnerable. Congress can work, and Congress has the power to deliver on this long held promise to enact a pathway to citizenship with lasting protections for undocumented immigrants. And we want to see them do that. There are questions that come about as like what can be done around the parliamentarian's rule, opinion, rule, whatever you would call it. Generally, process-wise, under the chamber's rules, which is the Senate, the presiding officer of the Senate, whoever that would be, either the vice president, the Senate chairman, can disregard the parliamentarian's advice. It has been done before, but not in recent times. If you've been following the news, you would remember earlier this year, the Democratic Party, which is the ruling party right now in the Senate, decided to abide by the parliamentarian's opinion on raising the minimum wage. So we once again are not seeing this political determination from our members of Congress to push forward with policy solutions that we know and is evidence to improve the lives of our community members. So the ask for us today is we need to continue chiming in with our members of Congress. Everybody. It doesn't matter what party they stand, independent, Republican, Democrat, they need to continue to hear from us to say, we want this, we need this. Americans want this, Americans need this, community members want this, community member needs this. Whatever messaging your representative responds to. We need a clear, clean, timely, permanent, and inclusive pathway to citizenship for up to 11 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. The window is slim. We might not have this opportunity again, and we cannot let this opportunity go. And so, right now, there's our action alert that my colleague Bo has put in the chat that you can use to send a message to your member of Congress right now to share that sentiment. It's also important to remind them that they need to unapologetically commit to making sure that immigrant communities are not left out of this reconciliation package. In the negotiations that are going on, in the conversations that are going on, there are many conversations around what are we cutting out. Once again, we fall into this toxic cycle of cutting back on funding that will help improve the lives of people while we see our members of Congress authorizing funding that harm lives, authorizing funding for war, authorizing funding for machinery that destroy communities, while we're told that we have to cut our coats according to our sizes when it comes to improving the lives of people. We have to move away from that scarcity mentality and say we can and we should put our community members in permanent protection statuses, no exceptions. We need to make sure as many people as possible can be put in there. And we also need to remind members of Congress that just because this opportunity is here doesn't mean we stop this fight, because we know with the way that legislation works, oftentimes many people are left behind. And so we will continue this fight until everyone has the protections that they want, they need, and they deserve. And so, with that, I will close my dramatic monologue as I'm the only one speaking to you today, and open up for any questions that you might have in terms of the process, in terms of of the state of play, in terms of what's next, in terms of messaging, and ways that you can be involved in uplifting these calls to action that I have shared. I see a question from Maria, which says, if the parliamentarian is a recommendation and is thought to be a neutral force, could the Republicans and moderate Dems take it as a tool? Unfortunately, yes. The parliamentarian at the moment is staffs whoever is leadership, but really, when a proposal is brought to the parliamentarian, imagine it's a courtroom where each side has to make their claim. So they have to litigate it in front of the parliamentarian. So if you're pro this proposal, you make reasons and justifications for why you think it has budgetary impact that can allow it into the reconciliation process. If you're against it, you come up with all the reasons why you think not. And so politically it like the parliamentarian can be used in that way to say to advance one side of the rule of the aisle's goals and dreams, like legislatively, while if you are one who's not in support of what the parliamentarian is also not in support of, um it's good. I guess I would say it's politically sound for you. So the parliamentarian can be used as a tool on both ends. The parliamentarian can be used as a tool for members of Congress to sort of count this pathway to citizenship out of the process. And one of the asks that we're continuing to reiterate is that the parliamentarians' ruling does not count us out. We should not give up on this pathway to citizenship. We need commitment to the finish line. We need political courage. We need unrelenting efforts to protecting people. In the past 4 years, we saw unrelenting efforts to harming communities. We want to see that energy channeled in for good. We want to see that. We want to see our members of Congress do that. And these promises were made. We're not making these up, this demands up from nowhere. Promises were made from the White House down to local elected officials to protect immigrant communities. And now it's time to pay up on those promises. So, Maria, I hope I answered your question. And if you have a follow up, please feel free to jump into the chat as well. Thanks for asking that question again, Maria, around time. So I will preface this with the timeline and this entire process has been flux. It has changed every day. We were anticipating a House vote on the reconciliation package today. We do not know that that is going to be happening, and so it is not over until it's over. If there are any plans you had to schedule a meeting with your member of Congress, to call them, to email them, to stand outside their offices with a boombox screaming "Citizenship for all," to join a protest, a rally, to drive letter drops, whatever it is that you had planned, it's not too late to implement that plan with your community members. It's not too late to continue to do education for this as well. A toolkit has been put in the chat there that we developed alongside faith partners who are also working hard on this issue. Some of the resources there, because of how quick things are changing, might be outdated, but they're very relevant to give you a better idea and to just resource you to do what you need to do to activate your community to back this position and to hold your members of Congress accountable. I would also flag that it looks like the House will be going on recess as of next week up until October 18th. And so we have 2 weeks that they might be in district meaning back home in their state. And so this is an opportunity to seek them out. This is an opportunity to take community members of Congress to go make sure that they're hearing from you to say, we're watching this. And you cannot come back here with empty without fulfilling on the promises that you made to our community. So that's an important timeline that I can at least give you to say that they probably will be going on recess. And so there's room to find them and tell them all the things you want to tell them. And so recess dates will be most likely hmm, from October 4th to October 15th. That is the timeline that we hear will be the recess date. Like I said, it could change. We have 2 more minutes till 5:30. These are normally half hours so that we're not bombarding you with too much information. But feel free to stay tuned to our social media channels where we'll be keeping you updated and giving you ways to take action as well. And I will just pause briefly for any final questions before we close out. All right, I see none. I hope I was clear enough, and I hope the points you understood the process that's going on. A lot is going on in the media, so completely understand the need to take a step back and once again reorient us on what our goals are for our community, which is a clean, clear, timely, inclusive, permanent pathway to citizenship. So thank you all. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and please take care of yourselves as many things are happening today. All right. Bye.